Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to talk about the best Dharma talk ever given, but you have to wait for that. I have two objectives here. One is simpler than the other, and that is that I want everyone to say something. And if you don't know what to say, because I'm going to ask some questions, you can say, "Je ne sais pas." And I ask my grandkids what that means. And they always say, "I don't know." And I'll do it like every year or two, so they actually forgot. And also I wanted to talk about my first teacher, Carl Jerome. I wrote a few people that I was doing this entrustment, and he was the first one to respond. And he said, "It's so great that your community appreciates you." Yeah, and that was so, and then he said, "Let me know if I can be of any assistance." Oh. Which was nice too. And he always criticized me for being so discursive. So, and that's the world I grew up in. So anyway, this has been a wonderful journey. Thank you all. And it's so great that we're together and we've had this history together. And that really helps the trust, doesn't it? In the practice discussions that we did, and I think I've spoken to everyone but Gail, but if I'm wrong, please excuse me. And Gail and I speak this afternoon. There's a lot of suffering in this world. Just unbelievable. And I often think about Hercules and having the 12 tasks. And I had a wonderful like Saturday day camp teacher who was Greek, and he would, when it was raining especially, we couldn't be outdoors, he would bring us in and he would tell us these Greek myths, and I'm still like shaking from them, you know, to still remember that, these stories. And the difference between, you know, there's Hercules and the 12 tasks of Hercules, and I thought, I'll never have those kinds of challenges. And little did I know, and it was just this morning that I figured out the difference between Hercules and us. And Hercules, these were individual tasks that he had. And what we have is each other. And so our tasks are just as challenging, and they're almost, well, as I was, you know, having breakfast or whatever that was, but thanks for the yogurt. Our tasks are more challenging. Like Hercules, these were tasks that could be completed, like cleaning the Aegean stables. You know, he did each one of these. We have tasks that we can't complete. A famous rabbi said that it is our job not to finish the task, but just to engage in the work. And we've been learning and practicing that with Soji too. But there are no fixes to so many of our challenges. So how do we end suffering when our bodies age, when our friends and family pass on, when world peace seems unattainable? Is this even possible? Buddha said there is an end to suffering. That is our koan. The Xingqing Ming tells us to not be attached to our preferences. Other translations, by the way, all say don't even have preferences. But I think it's not a different meaning. It's just the preferences in the other ones are kind of going overboard. Another koan, not to be attached to your preferences. Our practice is to work with these koans. We navigate a terrain that would even challenge Hercules. I mean, how would he deal with sickness, old age, and death? He didn't do those. I hope that this talks help you to end our suffering. Comments? Talk's over. Anyone? Ellen? Oh, I'm going to call on people. Remember, you can say je ne sais pas.
I won't say je ne sais pas. Well, Kim, I guess the thing that hits me most is you, who you are. I really, I just sit here taking you in, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you. And that reminds me of something I didn't put in my talk, but I wanted to say. And that is, Peg gave us an activity once where we gave gifts to each other. And to the last, it was, I think in a precept class, maybe, I don't know. But, we talked about a gift that had been given to us that was very important. That's it.
Right.
And what was really significant was not the gift, but that someone cared. And person by person, they told about this experience, and they told about the gift. Someone gave me a car, someone gave me a knapsack, it went on and on and on. But it wasn't the gift. And so the gift we are to each other is like that, and as you've been, Ellen. So thank you. There we go. So one of the questions in my mind is whether there is a universe. I heard a nice talk by a rabbi on the 12 tribes of Israel and how they are like a vector, my word, starting from a foci, again my word, and going out forever. So the idea of something separate from us is a delusion, as is the idea that we stop at our skin. What was funny is the first time I wrote this, I said we start as individuals, then tribes, and then the universe. And driving up to Appamada that day, I started thinking, Kim, you can't make this stuff up. We don't start as individuals, we start as tribes. I mean, that was what the story was, at least. And so I was corrected by my conscience. My universe includes my past, present, and future. It is all my thoughts, even my thoughts that I haven't had yet. And thoughts I have about your thoughts in your universes. Carl Jung had a patient who walked on the moon. He insisted that's what the patient did. That was part of the patient's universe, which also became part of Jung's universe. And then there is the capital U universe. It is the collection of all the universes, and it forever grows, and it is unknowable. Comments? Genevieve.
Hi, Kim. It's lovely to be here with you, and you're reaching out in a really embracing way. I'm on what first came up for me, which is a Swedish proverb. A joy shared is doubled, a sorrow shared is halved. And, you know, sometimes there isn't anything we can do about someone else's sorrow, maybe most times. But being present with them allows it to move through them and go to ground. I think of it almost like an electrical current. It gives them a way to have that move through them and go to ground. And it also engenders greater intimacy when you can be with someone where they are.
Thank you. Sometimes when I'm sitting here, I think about all the light in the room that we can't see until it hits someone or something. You know, it's similar, isn't it? We need this, the walls, all the stuff that God, I wish I could see light. You know, not light bouncing off things, but just light. But anyway, I'm working on that. Oh, now for the good news. So I think we're really stuck in our Judeo-Christian background in many ways. And I'm going to make up some words, but I'll tell you what they mean. I like to call it the original choice. And I'm not going to use the S word that rhymes with tin, okay? The original choice. And I've been in a Torah group, and it was a 20-year reading of the Torah, and I started maybe 10, 12 years ago or something. So I didn't get to do Genesis. And so now we're doing Genesis word by word, and sometimes we do the same passage over again a week later. And I'm really curious about whether it really talked about the S word, or was that just a reading? What does that really mean? So, and I decided it was the original choice that we had. In Buddhism, we are forever grateful that we live in the human realm because it is a realm where we eat from the tree of knowledge, AKA life. And we have a chance for enlightenment. So God said, if you eat from this tree, you will die. It's not like it's bad to eat from the tree. It just, this is the consequence. And originally, people would live to 700 years. And after eating from the tree, it went down to 130. I don't know what happened after that. Buddha, Dogen, and others claim we are already enlightened. We just need to realize it. And then our suffering could end. So I truly believe this, that there is an end to suffering. I know some people kind of think, well, you could reduce it, or maybe not in this life. I don't know. Meeting with each of you for practice discussion this week taught me that we are all struggling with life as it is. We aren't cognizant of the remarkable gift we've been given to be human, to be given all the abundant gifts of life. We suffer, and much of that suffering was Buddha described as a second arrow or dart. It is our reaction to life as it is. You know, some say it's the discrepancy between life as it is and life as we'd like it to be that causes the problems. Oh, the best Dharma Talk was given a few thousand years ago by Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. He gave a talk, maybe his only talk, and his talk was a failure, even if it was remembered thousands of years later. And here's the talk. One day, the world-honored one ascended the seat. Manjushri struck the gavel and said, "Clearly observe the Dharma of the King of Dharma. The Dharma of the King of Dharma is thus." That's the entire talk. The world-honored one then got down from his seat. So it sounds pretty good, things as they are. Pretty great to simply say that. Some say such this, some say life as it is, we can trust that. The offering will be what it is. But like the first ones, we have a choice to either be led by karma or pulled by vow. That vow is to turn toward the second arrow and say, as Buddha said to Mara, I see you. The verse that accompanies Manjushri's story ends with a suggestion that maybe Manjushri said too much. The Dharma is such and that's too much. It ends with, nothing can be done about Manjushri's leaking. So he leaked. He said too much. Peg used the word, I asked her about this, containment. Leaking is when you're not contained. But he couldn't help himself, so we should forgive him. Oh, I want to say another thing about Carl, Jerome. He was teaching us that something like everything is Buddha nature, something like that. And everyone has Buddha nature. And at that time I had a couple of dogs and I said, do dogs have Buddha nature? Not knowing, that's our famous koan. So, and he laughed. He didn't say that's a koan, which was very generous of him. He just laughed. And it's a discursive mind that tries to figure that out and also that gets stuck using that mind. That's been the beautiful thing that we've all enjoyed about koans. I have to go back to gallery so I can see everyone. How do you speak of these things of Zen except from the intellect? Nellie, how do you speak of these things of Zen except from the intellect? What did the little prince say?
Can you repeat the last sentence, please, Kim?
Yeah, sure. How do you speak of these things of Zen except from the intellect? What did the little prince say?
Oh, on ne voit bien qu'avec le cœur, l'essentiel est invisible pour les yeux.
Merci.
You want a translation?
Please.
It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Thanks, Nellie.
Merci au petit prince.
Ganto came to Tokusan. He straddled the threshold of the gate and asked, is this ordinary or is this holy? Tokusan shouted, Katz. It's K-A-A-T-Z, but many different spellings I found. Kanto made a deep bow. Hearing of this, Tanzo said, hardly anyone but Ganto could have accepted it that way. Ganto said, oh, Tosan, can't tell the difference between good and bad. At that time, I raised up with one hand and suppressed with the other. So in koans, sometimes we see the word cats or we see some shout or something like that. And that's partly, I think, all that can be said. Or maybe we should just sit, as Okamura writes in Living by Vow. When we sit, we face the absolute, the infinite, and we let go of thought. Or in the Sinchen Ming, the more you think about these matters, the farther you are from the truth. Step aside from all thinking, and there is nowhere you can't go. You've probably noticed that everyone says the same thing. In fact, you could almost go into the library, open the book arbitrarily, and see the same thing that, in every book. It just repeats and repeats and repeats. Our Soto Zen founder Dogen wrote, I would point out, this is a little hard, so I'm going to repeat it twice. What you need to know is that neither of those particular persons, these are persons who were enlightened, the one who, upon seeing a color, clarified what mind is, and the one who was awakened to the way by a resonating sound, spent time in speculation. Neither of these people spent time in discursive thought and critical assessment while diligently practicing the way, nor did they create a second person, be it a self or another, while they were directly engaged in that practice. What you need to know is that neither of those particular persons, those people who were enlightened, the one who upon seeing a color clarified what mind is, and the one who was awakened to the way by a resonating sound, spent time in speculation and critical assessment while diligently practicing the way, nor did they create a second person, be it a self or another, while they were directly engaged in that practice. So understanding through explanation is impossible, and yet it is the best I can do here. I apologize. So the next question is, Lori, what tribe were you born into?
What tribe? I was born into the human tribe.
Thank you. Lynn, we haven't heard from you to the group, I don't think. And you always have such great things to say. What tribe were you born into?
Je ne sais pas. However, I do have three things I want to say.
Okay.
Number one, deep thoughts, Kim. I appreciate your profundity. You started off with old age, sickness, and death. Doesn't get deeper than that. And I was going to, we had our talk this morning, the two of us, I was going to say that was it for me. This is what I wanted to talk about, but I thought that was too heavy. It was too much. And then you started your whole talk off with it. So that's amazing. Number two, is there a universe, you asked? Yes. And you are the universe. The wonderful writer Kathleen Dowling Singh, the way she words it is, the universe is Kimming, or the universe is Kathleening, or the universe is Geneving right now. And I just love that. I love that thought. And three, I'm typing on my other laptop to take good notes from you. And when you were talking about suchness, the autocorrect changes it to muchness.
Oh, nice.
I can avoid it by capitalizing it. So then it's just a capital word, muchness. So I had to write it all in caps. And it allowed me to keep suchness there, but it's got a little red line under it, which means it's incorrect. I guess that maybe so.
And I love the word abundance too, which muchness connects to, doesn't it? Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a little clip of Gomer Pyle saying that. Say, thank you, thank you, thank you. First, a little on, you can trust the universe completely. I once sat next to a missionary on a plane and asked him the same question about dog backwards. I'll say that. Why did dog backwards do the Holocaust? I would say. But I didn't say dog backwards to him. his answer was always the same. Dog backwards works in mysterious ways. See, how come this? How come this? How come this? So that's been a koan for me. Shantideva, a renowned 8th century Buddhist philosopher, said, "The Buddhas do not wash unwholesome deeds away with water, nor do they remove the sufferings of beings with their hands. Neither do they transplant their own realization into others. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that they liberate beings." And I wrote a little note below that this morning. That's what we can trust. And I'd like to hear from is Gail, because Gail likes Shantideva, and help me with the pronunciation of his name.
Well, where did you get that idea, Tim? I don't think we've ever spoke about Shantideva.
In depth and practice about 5 years ago, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can help you with the pronunciation. I am really enjoying this talk. It's going off in directions that I had no idea what happened, but that's very you. I look forward to our talk later today. Best for last.
The truth of suchness that they liberate beings. It is teaching the truth of suchness. Isn't that something?
Yes, it is. I just wanted to say, the whole topic of suffering has caught me. And I just want to say that I'm responsible for all of my own suffering, only 100%. Only 100%. And that's the second arrow, isn't it, that we've been talking about. There's life and what's happening, and then there's everything I'm thinking about it. And that's the good news. That's the good news.
And I like how in right use of power, we talk about like 150%, the responsibility of something in a power up position.
Yeah.
And maybe we could even apply that to our own responsibility in terms of our suffering. 150, like
Yeah.
up and
Right. Yeah.
I wish I could have told the missionary about this, that dog backwards, if she exists, doesn't work with her hands, playing dice with the universe, as Einstein said, but rather in much more subtle ways. That gives us an opportunity to engage suchness, or things as they are, to provide us an opportunity for awakening. We read at the end of the Sing Ching Ming that the mind of absolute trust is beyond all thought. If I've learned anything in my life, it is that those things that matter, like love, art, and Zen, are all beyond thought. And about Zen, I wanted to say a word about Zen. That was one of my original interests in going into Buddhism, find out about Zen. But I've been drinking Zen all week. The Zen tea that we have here. And I was wondering how come I don't fall asleep. And I read yesterday on the label that it had caffeine in it, and I haven't been doing any caffeine. So now I know about Zen.
Wakes you up.
I told my wife, and she said, "Don't you read the label?" Trust is a lot harder for some people than for others. My mother trusted everyone's good intentions. That is until they demonstrated that they weren't so good. Then she was a lion. My dad was much more cautious, chastising me for taking in stray dogs, fearing that they'd bite someone. He was a lawyer and thought, well, this is going to be a lot of work. Somehow, I was much more influenced by my mother's positive outlook. My wife, Linda's dad, grew up during the Depression and then fought in 2 wars. He assumed that one always needed to be on the defensive. I think Linda took some of that. If you didn't grow up in an environment you could trust, it must be a lot harder to trust in community. If you didn't grow up in trust, in an environment you could trust, it must be a lot harder to trust in community. And we see a range of people. For some people it's really easy to trust a community, and for others it's really difficult. And that's something I think we can all examine is how hard or easy is it for us to trust anything? I could trust that my needs could be met as a kid. I mean, I could, any need I had that I could express, and I wasn't very good at expressing things, but that I could express until I did art. And then, you got to learn to read art, which is very difficult. I haven't learned how to do that. Of course, there were many non-material needs that weren't met, but those have been opportunities for growth. Yet there is a well-known Zen book by Katagiri Roshi that tells us you have to say something, manifesting Zen insight. So I'll try. Lori asked the group after Zazen one day, how can we trust the universe completely? Someone said that they didn't trust the universe, but they trusted themselves. My response was that there really isn't any separation between ourselves and the universe. As we look at our skin with electron microscope, which I've never done, but supposedly little particles are, bouncing off. So you couldn't even say where you end, physically. I like that. Our universe is as large as our imagination, and our imagination is part of ourselves. A baby might believe that their entire world is themselves and their mother. Gradually, their world expands, but it is only as big as their imagination, and our imaginations are unique to each of us. In our Jewish tradition, we say every person is an entire universe. American Hostage Hirsch Goldberg Poland said, we must save he's the father of Hirsch Golden Poland. We must save all these universes. So each person is a universe, and we have to save them. I'm now seeing that we are all universes, and like in Indra's web, each of our paths intersect and reflect each other's path. So there's this connection of all these universes that's really striking. Part 3, trust in communities. I wanted to give the talk on something else, and Peg said, no, it has to be trust in communities. So now we're doing that.
Actually, that's the theme of our intensive.
Oh.
And so what your talk should somehow relate to the theme of the intensive.
And it will.
Because it's the last talk of the intensive.
Okay. Oh, I'm not complaining. But what about trusting communities, which is the theme of the intensive? The Buddhist Sangha community seemed to have been a unique contribution of the Buddha. Our word appamada, mindful energetic care, reflects this contribution. This is from Karen Armstrong's book, Buddha. So I never quite got it until I read this, that Buddha invented the idea of a Sangha. Other religious communities didn't have that. But above all, the bhikkhus had to learn to live together amicably. The inevitable difficulties of living with people whom they might not find personally congenial would put the equanimity they were supposed to have acquired in meditation to the test. It was no good radiating compassion to the 4 quarters of the earth if bhikkhus could not be kind to one another. I really love that. When my daughter first started teaching, it was 2nd grade, and she would remind the students, remember, you're in 2nd grade now, you have to be kind to one another. I asked her about that the other day. This was like 30 years ago for her, 25 years ago, and she didn't remember saying that. There were times when the Buddha had to take his monks to task. Once he rebuked them for failing to take care of a bhikkhu who had dysentery. On another occasion, when the Buddha and his entourage were traveling to Savatthi, a clique of monks went ahead to one of the local settlements and secured all the beds. Poor Shariputra, who seems to have had a bad cough, had to spend a night outside under a tree. Such rudeness, the Buddha told the guilty monks, undermined the whole mission of the Sangha, since it would put people off the Dharma. And gradually, the best of the bhikkhus learned to set aside their own selfish inclinations and consider their fellows. The person who returned first from town with the alms food made the hut ready for the others, setting out the seats and preparing the water for cooking. The one who arrived home last ate the leftovers and put everything away. We are very different in body, Lord, one of the monks told the Buddha about his community, but we have, I think, only one mind. We are very different in body, Lord, one of the monks told the Buddha about his community, but we have, I think, only one mind. So isn't that nice? The community has one mind. Why should he not ignore his own likes and dislikes and do only what the others wished? This bhikkhu felt lucky to be living the holy life with such companions. In the communal life of the Vasa, the Buddha, that's a place where they meditate. The Buddha had found another way to teach, but it could be in a yard or a garden or outside. The Buddha had found another way to teach his monks to live for others. King Pasenedi of Kosala was very impressed by the friendliness and cheeriness of life in the Buddhist aramas. It was in marked contrast to that of the court, he told the Buddha, where selfishness, greed, and aggression were the order of the day. Kings quarreled with other kings, Brahmins with other Brahmins, families and friends were constantly at loggerheads. In the arama, he saw the bhikkhus living together as uncontentiously as milk with water and looking at one another with kind eyes. In other sects, he noticed that the ascetics looked so skinny and miserable that he could only conclude that their lifestyle did not agree with them. But here I see bhikkhus smiling and courteous, sincerely happy, alert, calm, and unflustered, living on alms, their minds remaining as gentle as wild deer. When he sat in council, the king remarked wryly, he was constantly interrupted and even heckled. But when the Buddha addressed a huge crowd of monks, none of them even coughed or cleared his throat. The Buddha was creating an alternative way of life that brought the shortcoming of new towns and states into sharp focus. And I think that's what Peg was talking about last night in terms of what we could do in a divided world, is we could mirror that kind of behavior. Like in the Buddhist community, we read in a book, The Art of Community, that in a community there is a mutual concern for one another's welfare. This is different from some organizations, though there sometimes doesn't always seem to be a fine line between organizations and communities. It is more of a continuum. A good family is a community because everyone cares for each other. And on the end of the spectrum might be a utility company that provides a service in exchange for money. Both organizations are needed, but trust in them is different. Appamada is a community, though each of us see it differently, depending on how we interact with it. For some, it is home. For others, it is a place we occasionally visit. It feeds us in various ways, and we feed it in various ways. One aspect I love about Appamada is that there aren't better and worse ways for us to be in this community. But what about trust in community? Is trust a necessary ingredient for a community? Is it the glue that holds a community together? Is it what defines a community? Becky. Is it necessary?
Is what necessary?
Is what?
Is what necessary?
Would you rephrase your question?
Say it again.
Oh, is trust necessary in a community?
In a community, I think there will always be people who trust and people who do not. But the whole can still hold together in a way that each of us can grow. We can't require faith all the time from all of us, but we can learn it by being with each other in a complete way, in a full way. And yeah.
Thank you, Beth. I always enjoy your wisdom.
Could I add something to that?
Yeah.
So what occurred to me is that, trust is not it's not voluntary, you don't decide necessarily, but maybe the operational word is to be trustworthy. That the community has to be trustworthy, and then people can trust as they're able or as they're inclined. But our obligation is to be trustworthy.
That's what we talked about the first night, right? It's qualities that make community trustworthy. And then people come to that trust in their own time, in their own way.
So when we sense other people trusting, I think that helps too. Can we be in a community that we don't trust? I actually think it can exist if there are tools for repair. And if we are open to do that repair. Communities go through cycles of lots of trust, little trust. Often it seems that trust is lost. And sometimes we feel helpless to repair it. Can you trust an old car with bald tires completely? I think you can. You can trust it won't perform like a new car with good tires. And you can trust that it will perform like an old car with bald tires. Sometimes it won't start. Sometimes you'll have a flat tire. Sometimes you'll see a pool of oil on your driveway. You can trust that. Institutions that think. Mary Douglas, an anthropologist, believes that institutions can think, and in fact, their thoughts might guide us more than our own. This is Ludwig Fleck, who developed the first system of historical philosophy and sociology of science, wrote in 1935, "The individual within the collective is never or hardly ever conscious of the prevailing thought style, which almost always exerts an absolutely compulsive force upon our thinking, and with which it is not possible to be at variance." I'm going to read that again. "The individual within the collective is never or hardly ever conscious of the prevailing thought style, which almost always exerts an absolutely compulsive force upon our thinking, and with which it is not possible to be at variance." So that suggested to me that we're not free agents, and we don't know a lot of times what really is influencing us. It is tribal. It is hypnotic. And we see it clearly as we look at the other, much more than when we look at ourselves. We see the influence of the tribe. Watch Muslims pray, and they seem to be controlled by a force beyond themselves, like we do in the Zendo, but it is more apparent as we look at the tribe next door. Mary Douglas writes, "We know that individuals do submit their private interests to the good of others, that altruistic behavior can be observed, that groups have an influence on the thinking of their members and even develop distinctive thought styles. So the influence of a group or institution upon an individual can be positive or negative. But it's really, really powerful. We think we're kind of free agents, and lots of stuff is coming in that we don't even recognize, that's unconscious. and in terms of weight, maybe that mostly occupies our thoughts. And that's why I think it's so hard to convince anyone of anything. Because there's so many influences other than our words, like the tribe. But what is trust? In her foreword to Trust in Mind, Jan Chosen Bays outlines the stages of trust depicted in Trust in Mind. In reading this, I saw that we could apply her stages of trust to a community. I noticed when I moved to Austin and hardly knew anyone other than my daughter, that though I was part of a Zen community, there wasn't initially a lot of trust. How do you look at in newcomers? Dan, how do you look at newcomers? You've talked about in your teaching, they look at you as the new teacher.
I remember specifically at Alpamata being new, and it both being a struggle and feeling acceptance. My first day, I showed up late, and I was hungover. And Joel was the orientation leader that day. And I don't remember what you said, but I remember feeling extremely welcomed. I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah.
So as for newcomers, it's remembering that and being able to offer whatever I can.
It's so hard to be a newcomer. To remember that, with that feeling of being a newcomer. What are people going to think of me? Does someone online want to respond to the question, how do we look at newcomers? Jan.
I am a newcomer. So, I was thinking of some other things that I'm going to respond to. Friday night, we were asked, what do we put our trust in? And I said, nature. And the very next day, when I was out walking, I almost stepped on a cottonmouth. It wasn't lost on me. So I told a friend, and she goes, well, you can trust that the cottonmouth, if you step on it, will bite you. And I love what you said, because I have left communities. But part of that's my conditioning. And I love your thing about tools to repair. And part of that is my responsibility to repair it. And I just have to say, I love this talk, and you being my practice buddy has meant the world to me.
Well, it's meant the world to me too. Thank you, Jan. For me, I was aware that I was interacting with people for whom I had no history. That's when I first came to Austin. It was quite different from coming to a place that I had been at for 30 years and had many aged connections. These stages of trust are similar, and this is the Jan Chosen Bays stages of trust, are similar to the 10 ox herding pictures describing the stages of our practice. In the ox herding picture, an individual is lost, feeling that something is missing. She first sees the tracks of an ox, then finds the ox, then tames the ox, all along thinking that once she tames the ox, she'll be free of difficulties. And I think we go through that with our sitting. Once we can train our monkey mind, we'll be free of difficulties. And I often hear people say, and I say to my, I'm not sitting, or I can't sit, or I'm too, preoccupied to sit. But no, the ox is not the one to be tamed, but it is the individual herself that has to get it together. And in the end, even the taming can be discarded, and the individual returns to the marketplace as an ordinary person. So we think what we need to do is control, and then eventually we find out that even that's not the answer. So we looked at spiral dynamics, and here's Jan Shoshin Bay's version of the levels of trust, and I'm applying it to community, and I'm adding 2 levels that she didn't talk about, because I love 0. So level 0 is fear and caution. We don't trust. And then 0.5, that's the second level I'm adding, is realizing I don't trust. And we've come to realize here that how important that step is to move past just, I don't trust. Applying Jan Shoshin Bay's schema for trust and faith to the community, we see early in our practice, trust means believing there is a path to end suffering. Many come to Zen because they are suffering, and that is their highest priority. They have no experiences to justify their deep dive. They sit toward the back of the Zendo and are ready to get up and leave should things start to go south. But for the time being, they believe that there is something there that will end their suffering. In level 1, we rely on blind faith to trust. And that's all we have. And it is tentative. Some people can trust their blind faith, and others, and go into all kinds of, take a lot of chances in their life. Do things they've never done before. Others have more difficulty with that. Level 2, as our practice continues, blind faith is replaced by lived experience. We begin to test for ourselves the fruit harvested from cultivation of the heart-mind, and confidence arises. Here, trust is a willingness to follow the instructions of the Buddha. I had a colleague, an office mate, who taught philosophy and was a devout Catholic. I asked her if she would still believe in God if I proved that he didn't exist. Without missing a beat, she said, "Of course. My experience is so strong." After you've been married for 55 years, you know pretty well that what you can trust in one another. Linda said she was going outside for a little while to do some gardening. I know her well enough that I know she'll stay out until dark. I know that from experience. Imagine that level 3. So level 1 is blind faith. Level 2 is experience. Level 3, imagine that the community is like a screwdriver. In level 1, we believed it would pry open a drawer. Disbelief. In level 2, we used it to pry open a door. We had that experience. Level 3 is about recognizing the magic of the tool and honoring its infinite capacity. So it's way beyond just kind of a literal experience. We have the expression, "Thus we bow to Buddha." In this case, we bow to our screwdriver. to our altar, to each other. And in our intensive, we would say, thus we bow to Appamada. We recognize the community as something way beyond a tool to achieve some end, but still we are thinking of it as separate from ourselves. So there's me and the tool. I respect, honor the tool, but we're not one. Level 4, chosen rights. Less and less do we fall on strategies developed by the self-centered and self-referential mind. We now allow ourselves to begin to become Appamada, or any community. We begin to recognize that it is not a place or a collection of people. It is a force of energy that we are becoming a part. And there is still a hesitance, but there is still a hesitancy. And I think well, if you could think of Appamada as 913 East 38th Street, that would be a really literal thing. Or you can think of something that doesn't have an address, is past, present, and future, is as big as the universe, you know, there's all that range. The same hesitancy occurs in marriage, where one part of us steps in and the other part of us holds back. Or with artists, are they giving it all? Or are they hiding something? It gives meaning to the question, are you all in? What's funny is my mother came to visit me in graduate school, and behind where I was painting, there was another guy painting there, Percy. And she went up to Percy and she looked at his painting and she said to him, I think you're hiding something. She wasn't afraid to make these opinions. Finally chosen, level 5, level 5, we're moving along here. Finally chosen rights, we are inside out to an outside that is immeasurably vast. We are inside out to an outside that is immeasurably vast. Oh, I wrote repeat. Okay, I did. We are not even part of something, and there is not any more thinking about I. The community becomes who we are and extends forever into the boundless universe. There is no self and no other. And that's the point, isn't it, where it's really hard to say what Appamada is. Here's how Joanne Macy describes it. To be alive in this beautiful self-organizing universe, to participate in the dance of life with senses to perceive it, lungs to breathe it, organs that draw nourishment from it, is a wonder beyond words. To be alive in this beautiful self-organizing universe, to participate in the dance of life with senses to perceive it, lungs to breathe it, organs that draw nourishment from it, is a wonder beyond words. Now for a story. Master Jiru. Here's Master Jiru. And he's head of the Chan Temple in Chan Monastery in St. Louis, where my teacher, Carl, was part of that.
Do you want to show the people who are here also? Yeah.
Well, they should have seen it. They should have seen it. They'll see it there. You see? Master Jiru? Okay. The abbot of Chan Monastery outside St. Louis was driving down the road with a couple of his monks. He saw a peach stand and stopped to buy some peaches for the monastery. He noticed that there were two vendors, each selling the same peaches at different prices. Surprisingly, he bought some from both. The monks riding with him were dumbfounded. Why would such a wise man waste money like this? Finally, one asked Master Jiru, why did he not just buy the cheaper peaches? Because other than price, they were all the same. Master Jiru simply said, because they both have to make a living. This is living in non-self. This is living in a universe rather than in a separate world from everything else. Master Jiru stepped out of being in the center of his universe. And there was no ego here telling Jiru that he is a superior being because he thought of both vendors and what they needed. He acted with compassion, doing just what was needed in the moment. As we move through the steps of trust, we end up ceasing the fear of the 3 marks of existence: impermanence, suffering, and no self. As we progress in our practice, we develop stronger connections to our communities, and we give back to the communities in ways we were initially unable to give. And finally, as I've been saying, we aren't just connected, but rather we are our community. We are our universe. One more thing. Trust and mind aren't separate. In the same way, there ultimately will be non-duality between ourselves, in the same way that there will ultimately be non-duality between ourselves and our community, Yusong says in Trust and Mind, to live in this faith is the road to non-duality because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. This says more than you can't have mind without faith trust, for they are actually one and the same. It is like the ant farm I once had. It worked because the ants acted as one organism rather than individual selves. And in that description of the Sangha from the old days, I have that same sense that the monks acted as one organism. In a translation of the Xing Ming by Lu, which he titled Have Faith in Your Mind, when distrust ceases, your faith will be true. When distrust ceases, your faith will be true. That suggests that complete trust is a point where a group of people become a community, and even sometimes it is enough to have confidence that trust, when broken, can be restored. That's been such an important part, I think, of our community. It's kind of like a meta trust that we can fix it. And it is enough to believe that trust will be broken and that we have a means and energy and desire to repair it. But suppose you've never learned to trust because life is dumped upon you. It isn't easy, especially for some people, to trust oneself, a community, or the universe completely. As we move through 6 stages of trust, counting no trust as one stage, you can learn to trust one step at a time. And the end is trust Mr. Rogers when he tells us it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. How are we doing for time?
So maybe, we might have time for a couple of questions.
Okay.
Then we'll just have a shorter
Let's do one online question from someone who hasn't spoken yet. Rosemarie, you haven't spoken this whole time.
Hi. Yeah, well, actually, what was on, thank you so much, Kim. I did my best to follow you, and, it was just lovely. There's so much in there. One thing that came to me was from a talk that I had with Peg in practice discussion. We were talking about intimacy, and she was telling me about the book, Liberating Intimacy, Peter Hershock, and this is what I put in my email about sitting with you, Kim, was that what I learned from our discussion was that what happens to us as individuals in a community is happening interpersonally. And so when you are going through your preparation for the Dharma, for entrustment, that we're going through it. So anyway, this hit me, and it's like, for me, it's a new way of looking at my own experience as our experience, and vice versa. It's all happening together. And in terms of trust as a newcomer, relative, Yeah, I definitely, I was in that category of not having trust in my early years. So it was very, very gradual. And there were, of course, well, I came through Flint, so I had that experience, and there was trust there. But I learned little by little, and through practice, spiritual friendship, a very big thing, and activities, little, and a big thing was my role as an AV monitor. It was a huge learning experience for me. Not learning how to do it, but learning how to deal with mistakes. How I felt about that. So that took a lot of trust. So thank you. Thank you.
And by the way, as Rosemary was talking, I was thinking, if you try not to go to an intensive, you'll find during that week or whatever it is, you're in an intensive anyway. It's inescapable if you know what's going on. Well, thank you all. This has been quite a privilege. The last, this is getting close to the finish line. And it's my favorite activity. And the first time I did it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it wasn't the first time, but it was the most impactful conversation I ever had with anyone, I think. I mean, it just feels like that. You know, we can have conversations for hours and nothing happens, and then you can have this 10-minute conversation, and it seems you talk for 10 minutes and someone listens, and then they do that, and it just has been so powerful for me. And I thought this would be an opportunity to discuss where you are and what you've heard about and what you've thought about trust and belonging and community and faith. You know, sometimes we see trust and faith as the same thing, and sometimes different. What insights have you had from this week? If you're in the Zendo, take a walk with each of you talking for 10 minutes, then share what you heard from the other person. That would be for 5 additional minutes. After 25 minutes, we'll reconvene and we'll hear from each of you anything you'd like to share about trust and belonging and community. Any questions? Well, let's everyone take a little more than a minute, and because we have 25 minutes, and tell either what you'd like to say about your trusted communities now, or something you heard. I heard 2 things that were really impactful from my partner. So, and let's, just for ease, is it all right if we start with online? Jan, you want to start?
Okay. I got cut off for a little bit, so I missed a few minutes, but I enjoyed meeting with my partner, and one of the things we talked about is our own barrier to trust. And one of the things is, I know I have trust issues, but I'm kind of willing to, one of the things is showing up and being willing to be vulnerable. And I felt so much love this week from this Sangha. And anyway, I got so much. So that's it. Thank you.
Rosemary.
Hi. Yes, one of the most important things I heard from my partner was that when she was maybe a month or two into practicing with Appamada, she was invited for coffee with either Lori and Joel or Joel and Lori. And that meant so much to her, being an introverted person, to be asked to be known by them. So I would say that was, and for me, I'll just say one thing. There are many things, but taking the risk to ask for things that I knew were needed for the online participation, that, you know, the community in the Zendo could not maybe be aware, and that being responded to positively really built a lot of trust and belonging for me. Thank you.
Gail.
Yes. Well, I think I was struck by my share with Rosemarie, by her, and I told her this, the bravery that it takes to continue before you even know that something, that opening up is going to result in maybe you're not being heard and maybe you're being listened to and understood and connected to others. There's a kind of like a leap of faith that has to happen. And then the trust is built by what happens after you've taken that leap of faith. And what I was struck with Rosemarie was with how brave she is, because like me, she's an introverted person, not used to groups, and has been persistent in coming forward and opening herself to this experience at Appamada, despite feeling maybe at times unsure, or all the things that we feel when we're being vulnerable, that we're not going to be seen or accepted. So I was just struck by the bravery of that. Really beautiful.
Lynn.
Okay, so I'm getting the impression we're supposed to talk a little bit about what we heard the other person say too?
Either.
Oh, okay. Okay, I missed that part. Well, Geneva and I had something in common, possibly for different reasons, in that it was a hard week for us. It's a hard week for, like I said, different reasons. In my case, as a professional non-belonger, it's hard to tell whether the needle was moved. But I got to tell you, Kim, when you called on me this morning, and I had to talk, because I never do, but I had to talk, I felt like I belonged. So I guess that was some kind of a chemical reaction in my brain or something. But I will say this, that even though I've been an off and on member over the years, the pandemic, when we sat Zazen every morning in the pandemic, that made me feel like I really belonged. And I think everybody was equal then. There was one person in the Zendo, and everybody else was online, whether you were in Austin or not. And man, did I feel like I belonged. And then once we got out of that, we got a little bit into this we-they thing, and we're in the cloud and all that stuff. And I know that's been discussed a lot. And I think this Zendo, this center handles it better than anything else I've either seen or heard of. So I think we still have a long way to go. So that's me.
Thank you, Lynn. Geneva.
Well, as Lynn mentioned, it was a challenging week for me. So there were various aspects. I mean, for me, the spiral dynamics are fascinating and really engage my intellect and my reflective nature and my curiosity, and that was all very exciting. Of course, it's always lovely to spend time with all of you. I do feel that the exercise on Thursday night in particular, but some of the other exercises too, just made me feel made me feel more not a part of things than part of things, or less able to be a part of things than I would like to be, and not sure how to handle that. As far as belonging, though, I feel like I have a sense of belonging at Appamada that I've never had anywhere else, and that is that I can be my authentic self and belong. I don't have to be some other self in order to belong, and I can't make a mistake that will get me exiled. Not a genuine, like, well-intended mistake. And there was a person online who, at the first year or so, I kept saying, do I belong? I feel like I don't belong. Maybe I don't belong. And there was someone online who just kept saying, just stay. And that was really helpful. Super simple, but just, like an anchor, like, I want to see you here. Just show up, just be you, just show up. You don't have to show anything else. Being asked to be co-facilitator of Women in Zen has been a hugely wondrous and delightful surprise for me. And it's really one of the favorite things I've ever been a part of. So, and I really want to say that I do think all the time about all the effort that goes into everything at Appamada, and my gratitude is boundless.
Becky, thanks, Genevieve. Becky.
Well, the koan thing's a good idea because life is a koan. And Sangha is a family, and you're all my siblings. And I just think that's just amazing to feel so clearly that. And in terms of that, I'll mention, since Peg was talking about people have different picture of family, I really have a wonderful one. And so that's where I'm coming from, is this is about as good as it gets. So I really have appreciated the opportunity for us to look at it in ways that say why some of our siblings, and I mean some from my family too, that I sometimes don't understand what their problem is or what they're struggling with. And here we try to look at it in ourselves and share. And Sangha is just one of the most beautiful things I've ever encountered. So thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Ellen.
My partner and I have a lot in common, and trust is not a given. And so it was really nice to connect about that we both understood that, and we both felt that that being part of Appamada in some ways felt quite revolutionary. And to be able to trust what somebody else said, Janelle, that you wouldn't be exiled. You could be who you are and not be exiled. And so that's me. Thank you.
Nellie.
Well, I've been remembering what made me feel I belonged to my first Sangha. And I think it was the fact that they had sense of humor and they were taking practice seriously without taking themselves seriously. And there was a lot of warmth. And then things happened and I felt I didn't belong and I had to leave. But there was still that sense of belonging to, Buddha nature and Sangha, bigger Sangha. So I think has been very supportive in finding my way and finding belonging in other groups, and then feeling I didn't belong again, and then finding Appamada. And I feel maybe the most important thing for me also is for trust and belonging is the support we have with Right Use of Power and IFS and ACOMI as a complement to our Zen practice. I feel it's really very important for me to feel I can trust and belong, and that we have the tools to navigate struggles and taking care of relationships in our Sangha. Thank you.
Serenity.
Hi, everyone. My partner and I came from similar places of lots of mistrust, and through coming to Appamada have, at least for me, the baby steps I've made in trusting people has borne unexpected fruit in my everyday life that I have. And also, certainly I'm full of gratitude for Appamada's being the way it is, because it's probably the first experience of trust that has not been misplaced in some way in my life. So it makes a huge difference. And, those of you I've met in person, I feel are extra special, and some of you who I have not yet met and hope to meet in the future are equally as special. So thank you all.
And thank you, Serenity. Is there anyone who didn't consider themselves a loner before Appamada? Raise your hand. A loner? No. Okay, we have one person.
I'm the only one. I didn't consider myself a loner.
Oh, good. 3. Okay, good.
Zen practice does tend to attract
No, Rosemary doesn't.
who are more introverted. It does tend to.
Yeah.
But that's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Introversion and extroversion, and so a lot of the people who are attracted to Zen are a little bit closer to the introversion end of that spectrum.
There's a difference between being introverted and a loner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I consider myself an
That's
introvert,
right.
but not a.
Right.
Me too.
I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should have used that word. Okay,
Sorry, Kim. Just my perspective.
it's okay. Dan.
Do we want to move the computer around so it can be on our faces? I don't know, just a suggestion.
There we go.
That's pretty good.
There you are.
Yeah. I was originally paired up with Nellie, and then Jan got pulled back in, so I ended up moving in with Jan. And I really, really appreciated meeting with her. We had never chatted before, so it was very brief, but we connected a lot. And one of the things we connected on was both noticing how even if there is a community which offers a sense of belonging, it takes courage from the individual to accept that and to kind of not listen to the past patterns of there's something wrong here, and really just continuing showing up. That seemed to be helpful for both of us. And it's also really helpful when there is a community that will accept you and has warm people, and so. And then the other thing is that has been helpful for me in this is just remembering that trust helps you move through those periods of muddiness and those harder times. That's been helpful for me. Thank you.
So Ramona and I had a wonderful walk and talk, and I just resonated with so many of the things she said. I felt so listened to by her. And one of the things was that I want to say is, so we talked about the nature of holding silence and how it affects you in the sense that it frees you to not have to do those social things all the time. And that's, yeah, that feels good. But we also talked about how it can be difficult when you're a newcomer. And, I could really relate to that, because I would say probably, until a year ago, I don't think I felt like I really belonged, And I, I was going to say that this intensive has been really good for me in terms of recognizing how people are different, and the spiral dynamics is interesting, and I want to learn more about how to, because I'm one of these kumbaya people that just like everybody is one, and I think other people are the same, and so it's like it was very powerful for me. Let me say that. But I realized for the first time I'm expecting other people to be like me. Okay, so there's that, and I loved it. But I think I missed a more interactive activity in this intensive. And we shared a little bit about how impactful having interaction in the context of a trustworthy Sangha, where you show up as yourself and you have the opportunity to be authentic, how much that means, So anyway, So we really connected very strongly in a short amount of time, and it just, it does a lot to create a sense of belonging, having a connection, and it's special to a Sangha that has this kind of framework and this terrific amount of infrastructure that has been so caringly and lovingly been created. So, and I can relate to what people have said about you just gotta continue to come back or stay, and it happens. So.
Thanks, Darcy.
Yep.
Lori.
So I had to think about trust and community. What does that even mean? I know we've been talking about it, but it's hard for me to relate to it. I in a sense, because I'm so involved in it. So it's like, trust the community. What do you mean? I'm here all the time. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just hard for me to conceive of it being something separate from me. I mean, it's like Appamada, me, that's it, that's it's just, it's the way it feels, so.
What about the partner?
Oh.
No, what did she say?
What did she say? She said, she was saying that it sometimes takes a little while to find trust in a place, but she said that also, and Appamada was a place where she trusts, trusts, and she was making some comparisons with other faith places, and that she found that this place was particularly a place where she felt trust and I guess safety. Did I say that okay? Okay. Yeah, and then we talked a little bit, or she talked a little bit about belonging. And how that's a little bit, I think that's a little bit harder than the trust, to feel like one belongs. And she was saying that at the beginning she thought she had to be involved in a whole bunch of things, and then after a while she thought about that, and that maybe that isn't the way. You don't have to do that. You choose the things that you're interested in doing, and then through that and through the connection, I think as you were saying, Linda saying, that creates a sense of belonging.
Thank you, Lord.
You're welcome. I missed the instructions. We got that. Sorry.
Because we were late. We were tardy.
We were tardy.
Well, your attention now.
Actually, the reason that I am here at all is I was seeking community. And that's what drew me to this place. And I remember before I started coming in person, I'd been coming online and so forth. And what I remember is, like, in inquiry, everybody's like, oh, hi, so long, love you, haven't seen you for so long. And I thought, oh my God, there's this tight community. There's no space for me. They're not gonna wanna, there's no dent in it for me to fit in. So it took me a while to get up the courage to try to come. And of course, once I got here, I found out that wasn't true. But I was telling Lori, my very first time in person was her one day intensive a year ago, July. And there was such a warm welcome with everybody telling me, oh, come on Fridays, we'll go to Cherrywood. And, you know, and that was how I got to know people. And like Lori was saying, when I enter into something, I'll enter into it with a certain amount of trust. Like, this looks like it's going to be okay. But I'm kind of vetting all the way through, you know, are they really as genuine as they seem? And are they real? And is this all true? Or am I gonna, you know, hear, you know, backstabbing over here and gossiping over here and this and that? And I never have in all this time. So I feel now like I really do have trust in this community and in the people in it. And I'm very grateful for that. It was interesting being with Lori because me being one of the newer kids and her being this long time, she's been through so much, you know, so much history with this Sangha, that it was really interesting for us to compare notes and, you know, her to talk about, you know, the ups and downs and so forth and how she weathered them and hung in there with faith that, you know, things would change, but they would be okay. They'll be okay, whatever they are, right? Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah.
So, and me, I'm like, oh, this is great, you know? I must have come in kind of as we were coming back from COVID and, you know, things are, you know, growing and exciting and wonderful for me. So I've appreciated everybody being so welcoming and allowing me to just jump in and be where I am and who I am, and I've never felt any kind of criticism or judgment, and no one's ever hit me with a stick.
Just wait.
Just wait. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for that. I don't do well with being hit with sticks. I'm very grateful for what I have found here.
Thanks, Leslie. So Leslie lives down the street from my daughter, but they've never met, but tomorrow.
Tomorrow, we're meeting.
They're meeting.
I'm
so
she's my
excited,
neighbor.
I think they're really gonna connect.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to tomorrow, Kim.
Okay. Ramona.
Yeah, thank you. I walked with Darcy, and I really liked the spiral dynamics. It gave me a way to think about a conflicted relationship in my life and also another person in my life. So I want to learn more about it. But the thing that made the most impact on me was when we had our little break earlier and I was out walking in the back and I found these little seed pods and I didn't know what they were. And so I just, kind of the child in me that picks up rocks and stuff, I picked the right person and I said, "What, do you know what this is?" Out there. And Darcy had, takes her camera out and she says, "Oh yeah, I have an app for that." And so she took a picture of it and it's a honey mesquite. And so we went back and found a couple more and, I don't know, it was just so much fun. I just felt really connected with you, Darcy. And then we went on the walk together. So, and we had a lot in common. And we talked about how it can take a long time to feel trust and feel like you belong. And I also talked about the freedom and not having to chit chat, but also that sometimes as a newcomer, I feel a little bit invisible too. So anyway, I decided I would say it after all, Darcy.
Good to know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramona.
Yeah, thank you all.
Well, first, what I heard from my partner is how we are molded deeply somehow, and how those habitual patterns sometimes create these barriers with the sense of belonging and trust. And no matter how you see a person, he or she acts, you may assume this or that, but that's not necessarily the case. So that was important for me. And I'm usually in the cloud sendo. It's really interesting to be in here. And I had an overlap of agendas to do some other activity, but I chose to come here. I didn't even remember the topic of the intensive, but I wanted to meet our teacher in person. It's great to be here and to share also with the cloud sendo in a different way. Thank you.
Well,
this was a great idea, Dan.
Yeah. So I've realized as I've been listening to people that I've been thinking about trust and community in a little different way, but a way that's been really impactful for me, which is a little bit less about whether I feel trust in the community, which I actually really do feel, and that has not been difficult for me, or doesn't have. I just felt really welcomed in from the very beginning. And I remember when I first started coming, Kim was always introducing me to people and say, "Susan is starting to come, and she's coming every day." you were so like enthusiastic about my participation, so that was fun. It was kind of early in the post-pandemic stuff, so it was like, a new person. But how this has how this has been kind of rumbling around for me is trust in community, meaning the fact of our community and the strength of it and the existence of it. Am I trusting in that? And is it sustaining itself? Is it sustainable? Am I helping sustain it? It's real. So that's how I'm thinking about the phrase trust in community is how. And I've realized. So I was telling Mary Beth when we were walking that I think it was last night when I went to Central Market to get the stuff for the tea table, I ran into somebody who I worked with decades ago, and so I've known her a long time, although we're not exactly pals, but she was a former co-worker, and she comes here I think I've seen her here maybe once or twice at some or maybe Flint's, ceremony or something. But I don't think of her as being, just because I never see her, I don't think of her as being, but she does. And she mentioned an email that she'd gotten and that she was going to try to, and I thought, oh, she's part of the community. She feels that she is. And so it just made me think the community is not just what I see, it is really what people I don't even know or ever see, think of, and it just was so heartening to me to think about and to trust that, as distinct from feeling some sense of responsibility about how do we welcome people or whatever. And I still feel very focused on that in some ways. But I just feel like this whole thing has made me think so much bigger about community, and that's just a wonderful feeling. So that's how, and the whole spiral dynamics has opened up my mind to thinking about people in my life in different ways. So that's been really great too. But anyway, so that's me. That's great. And I'll let Mary Beth talk for herself.
So what came up for me, and it's been coming up every time I sit this whole week, is just the system that I'm in within Appamada. When I think about it, there is no doubt in my mind that I trust the system, right? When I think of other systems I belong to, I can't think of any of them that I trust. There's the state of Texas, there's the United States, there's my family. There are all these systems that I'm in that they feel oppressive. This system doesn't. It's the only one, other than Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, that I don't feel oppressed and that I feel a sense of freedom. And to me, it brings trust. So, thank you.
It's interesting for me to think about how Mr. Rogers tried to create community. He was way ahead of his time, I think. And we need him back. Two things I heard from Lynn. Well, one didn't surprise me. Is her interest in learning about intuition after having the education that she had and stuff like that. And I think we're all going through that in some way, that finding there's other ways. What I was talking about in my talk was ways of talking about Zen other than with the intellect, ways of understanding. But the other one that was really key that I don't remember if it's been mentioned here, was how important that Mylène said, was how important deep relationships are to the community. And the effect that they have. If everything's just like on the surface, the community's not going to develop in the same way. And and it's been so special that all of us, and I have known everyone here for a period of time before even the intensive. So that's been really impactful. The other thing that kind of surprised me is in many ways, this is the first community I've really been part of. Well, maybe but then from here, I got involved finally in my high school community. And it started 10 years ago. I guess I was involved also in Austin Zen Center before I came here. So, but I think it was the impact of community that got me doing that. And I did the 50-year book with someone else, where everyone got a page, and then so now I'm kind of like class president. And I did website, and I do a email list, and I do on the website is a list of our classmates who have died, and I keep that up. And there's one guy, poor guy, I think I keep putting him on the list, but he's not. I see him in one place, and so I thought, oh, I gotta have him, you know, every 5 years. And so that's funny, but so I feel like I've graduated high school. This was my 60th reunion, last year, and so that's been really special that we can take our sense of community here and put it in other places too. So that's it. Kim?
Okay. Well, my partner was Nate, and what I was hearing him say is that he's in a time of transition where he's thinking about a lot of things differently, about what leadership means, about what teaching means, and so there's a kind of redefinition or something that's happening around that sense of, and the confidence that he has in the Sangha, which has been in transition, as everybody knows, and struggled in some ways since I left, and his sense of optimism about how it's coming to its senses in a way. More people are stepping up and being involved, and that's really important. And so that was heartening to hear. And so that's what I heard anyway. Is that roughly right?
Yep.
And for myself, coming back like this and seeing all of you, it's really moving for me. It's really a kind of validation. So I said to Flint, if they can't make it work, our teaching has failed, you know? And if they can't see the value in these relationships that they have with each other, we have failed, because that's all we've taught. So to see how people are relating to each other, how the spirit of the community is continuing to, you know, improve, and the ways that more people are getting involved. Many people I don't even know are now quite involved, and I find that absolutely delightful, and also I think affirming that, you know, it's one thing to teach about, you know, whatever brotherly love or whatever, but it's just a lecture unless people are engaging it, unless they're actually living it. And for me to come back and see people actually living what our dream was for this Sangha is really heartening and inspiring. And of course, we're not dead yet, but we don't have as much day-to-day involvement as we had. And we both completely dearly love the Sangha. And it was really funny because a few years ago, long before the pandemic, Margaret Keyes was talking to me about, you know, the Sangha and about, about Flint and my partnership. And she said, well, you should have a website of your own. And I said, why? And she said, you know, for your own endeavors, you know. And I said, I don't have any self beyond Appamada. I just don't, there's no other part of me anywhere, you know? So going back to Illinois, I of course reconnected with my family, which is fortunate, you know, because I sort of neglected them while I was working so hard. And it's been really wonderful. But I always feel like I'm my best self when I'm here. I always feel like this is the best of me, whatever for whatever it's worth, you know. This is the best of me. So it means a lot that people show up, that they have sincere aspiration for this, that they're hungry for it. And I think everybody's really hungry for it, but they don't know it. And they don't know it's going to look like this. So it's really heartening to me when people do figure that out, when they do get connected, when they do discover that this is really what they want. So anyway, I'm very grateful, and I love coming back and seeing everybody and having a chance to just feel the energy of this warm connection, kindness. So needed in the world. Yeah, and I know that that's what we're radiating. You know, that's just what we're radiating out into the world. We don't have to go and knock on doors. We don't have to convert people. We don't have to proselytize, you know. It's just permeating into our families, our offices, our schools, places that we shop, you know, that just moment to moment quality. So anyway, so I'm really happy to be here, and thrilled to see each of you. And I'm happy that we've worked it out so we could do practice discussion with everybody one-on-one, because I love doing that and seeing people in person. So that's it for me.
So my partner was Peg, and as we were talking, I shared the question of what does it mean to care for community? And she shared something back which is sticking with me now. Still, it's not what you think it is. It's a little bit more like parenting, meaning you sign up for parenting having lots of preconceived notions about what the heck it is that you're doing, only to discover that you were wildly wrong. And it's much more of a responsive function, that things are constantly changing and evolving, and you're meeting new situations that are arising. And so that's what I'm sitting with now, and maybe would extend that as an invitation, that inquiry is an invitation to say, what does it look like for us to care for this community that means so much to us? And chances are it's probably different than what our initial thoughts were even before this intensive. So maybe we have some slightly different ideas about what it looks like to care for this Sangha that's been such a blessing for all of us. So.
Thank you. It's not really a question. I wanted to clarify, first of all, that my partner and I really talked about belonging rather than trust. And I just want to be really clear that I deeply trust this Sangha and that it's absolutely what I've always been longing for, and that your teaching, Peg, is thriving.
So how long our next thing is tea, right?
We're past tea.
We're past tea?
No tea for anybody. No cookies, no tea.
So Zazen is supposed to start at 4, and then at 4:30 we are preparing for the closing circle. And it's 4 right now.
Okay, I will put it to you. Would you rather have this tea break, which typically a tea break is like half an hour, and then come back for the closing circle? Or would you rather have some Zazen time and come back for the closing circle?
Tea break.
Tea break, okay. Figures. I shouldn't even have asked the question. What was I thinking? Yeah. Okay, I think that's perfectly fine. And so, folks, we will have a half hour tea break, is it? When do we come back for closing circle?
4:30.
4:30, okay. We'll come back at 4:30 for closing circle, have tea and a cookie, and we'll see you back here.
And Gail and I have practice discussion.
Too bad for you, Gail.